a video on how to lay out light fixtures in evenly spaced inside of a room. And I already started some of this work, but let me just back up a little bit. We want to put light fixtures in a room like this one, but we want them to be evenly spaced. What does that mean? It means the distance between this light and this light, or let me have one that that has more than 4 lights. So the distance between this light and the distance between the rows, row, is the same. Now, that doesn't mean the distance between the columns have to be the same. In other words, the distance between this column and this column vertically is not the same as the distance between this row and this row, because that only happens if the room's perfectly square, so it's evenly spaced. In this case, maybe you can tell by looking at this that the distance between these two light fixtures is slightly larger than the distance between these two fixtures, but they're evenly spaced in the vertical this way, and they're evenly spaced in the horizontal. So how do we do that? Well, let's take the conference room for example. Now, how I know where to put the light fixtures is because I usually send it to a lighting designer that helps us. And so the conference room is kind of, let's do the conference room last. Let's do this main office. So we got 5 8 fixtures across the top, across 2, and then 2 rows. So 5 columns, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 rows. So how do we do that? Well, hopefully the room is rectangular, and that would be the easiest thing to do. I draw a diagonal line from corner to corner. And what I want to do, since I have 5 fixtures across, I'm going to divide the room across, not by 5, but by 10. So what I could do is this. I could divide the room across by 10. And there's a divide command. It divides that line into 10 segments. Let me pull it out here so you can see. And then there is only 2 rows. So I'm going to divide that by 4. So it's always the number of rows or columns multiplied by 2. And why is that? Well, if I divide this line by 2, so I go in the divide command, I divide this line by 2, all it gives me is 1 point. There it is right there. There's 1 point right there. Maybe you can see it, but it gives me, when you divide something, it puts some points there. So that means I'm going to have to put 1 row of lights across the middle. Well, that's not what I'm trying to do. In this case, I'm trying to do 2 rows. That's why I multiply it by 2. So here, it gave me a point there on that line. It gave me a point there, which I'll ignore, and then it gave me a point over there. And then they're evenly spaced, because the distance between the light and the edge of the wall, let's call it 3'6", is the same distance between the light and the center of the room. What we're trying to do here is accomplish even spread of light. So let's just assume that this is the light fixture and this is how much light it puts out. Well, if I put another light in my other spot, then I'm not going to have any dead spots. So I hope that makes sense. That's why evenly spaced. So here we're going to have, I said we're going to have 5 lights, so there's 10 points. I'm gonna erase this diagonal line. I'll show you in a second why I use diagonal lines. So there's 10 points right there. Well, actually, there's 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because I divided it into 10 segments. Segment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then there's one on this other side. So there's 10 segments. Where I put my lines are on the first one, and then I'm going to skip every other. So on the 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 9th. And then, with those lines intersect is where I'm going to put my lights. And I copy a light from somewhere else, and I copy it to here and to here. And then, so I'm not copying it 10 times, then I'm just going to copy those 2 lights over, over, and over, and over. So then my lights are evenly spaced in that room. And that's how you do evenly spaced lights. If you were doing the 2x4s, you'll do the same thing. Instead of putting the center of the round fixture, you put the center of the call out right there. So the center of that circle, which is the center of that light, will go at those intersections. So that's how you do that one. Let's do this room again, and I'll show you why I use diagonal lines. So this executive office is sort of divided into 2 spaces, it looks like. Well, no, I'm just going to divide it evenly. Same thing. It looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across, so 5 columns, and then 2 rows. In case you don't know what I mean by columns and rows, the columns are going straight up. One column, and then the rows go across. So there's a row of 5, and there's a row of 5. 2 rows of 5s equals 5 columns of 2. So in this room, we're going to ignore these 2 lines right there because that's just ceiling grid. We're going to ignore that. And so there's 2 rows of 5. And I'm going to use a diagonal instead. Diagonal just saves me one little step. I'm going to copy the diagonal to one side or the other, and then up or down. This is my vertical line, and this is my horizontal line. So I'm going to take the component of this diagonal line. That's kind of what. So I'll take the vertical component to divide it by 4. But I don't have to draw this, and I don't have to draw that, because I can just divide that line by 4 into 4 segments. Click on the line at 4, and then I have my points. There, and there. Divide that line into 4 segments. 1, 2, 3, 4 segments. And then draw my lines across. So that line, so that. I'm not listening to myself. So I do the first one, I skip the second one, and I put one on the third one right there. And then I'll do the same thing here. Since there's 5 lights, I'll multiply it by 2. I'm going to divide this line by 5. So then I'm going to raise the line so I can see the dots better. Or, boy, I'm really on mark today. I'm going to divide this line. Since there's 5 light fixtures, I'm going to divide it by 10. Not 5, 10. So divide by 10 right there. 10. Hit enter. So there should be 9 dots. Erase it, or I kind of can, you kind of can see where they are. So you'll see the first one. I'm going to draw a really long line past everything. I know. That way I know. And I can just draw 4 more lines, or I could just copy this line. And I'm not going to copy to the next dot, but I'm going to skip it. I'm going to go to that one. Not that one, but that one. Not that one, but that one. And then on the last one. And you can see the spaces are even. So they're evenly spaced. Where do I put my lights? Well, my lines where all those lines I just drew intersect. Here, 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 and here. So I'll copy a light, and I'll put them at each one of those intersections. So I'll copy the top row. I just draw the top row, and then I copy it down. and then they're evenly spaced. Then I erase these ugly lines that I used as reference, and I don't forget to erase the dots as well. So then I have nicely evenly spaced lights here. Let's do a tiny little space. In this space, I'm going to have 4 fixtures, so I'm going to divide it by 2 in each direction. Copy to this side and the side. I'm going to divide my lines into 4 segments because there's 2 fixtures, and then I'm going to draw my lines. Line there and line there, and it turns out that these line up with the fixtures on the office next door because the vertical dimension of this little lobby is the same as the vertical dimension of the office. So I divide it vertically into 4 segments. I'm going to divide it horizontally into 4 segments. And I'm going to take the first and the third dot. So skip a dot again. And then let me erase the line in the middle for clarity. I'm going to copy this light fixture to those intersections. So then my lights in that space are evenly spaced within that space. These lights are evenly spaced within that space. If you notice, they don't have to necessarily be the same between spaces, because in this case, these lights are 10 feet. I'm sorry, 4 feet apart in this room, but they're in the room adjacent to it. They're actually a little further apart. They're like 5'8". We're overlapping lights, the light beam a little bit because one column of lights is not going to give us enough light, so we're going to have 2 columns. Sometimes you have more light than you need because deleting 1 row or 1 column will give you much more less light than you need. So in lighting, it's okay to oversize. And so that's how you do evenly spaced lighting. I'm going to stop that video right here and make a quick one.